For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. When people talk about the worst offenses in NFL history, especially in the Super Bowl era, the number one name that comes to mind is this team right here, the 1977 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was a team that averaged a grand total of 7.4 points per game. Yes, you heard that right. Not even 7.5 points per game. Over the first 12 weeks of the season, the Buccaneers, in addition to going 0-12, not only got shut out 6 times, but they scored 53 points, or 4.4 points per game. If you had season tickets to the Buccaneers, and you went to every single home game that they had, first off, my condolences, but second off, you didn't see your favorite team score a touchdown at home until December 18th, as in the final week of the season. Over their first 6 home games, they scored 3 points, which came in week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings. Doing some simple math, the Bucs got shut out in 5 of their 7 home games that season. And today, we're going to talk about one of those shutouts, as in this game right here against the New York Giants. Because how far would you go to preserve a shutout? Would you deliberately sacrifice your team's chances of winning the game just to try and do something that looks cool on the stat sheet? A shutout is one of the greatest achievements that a defense can have. It means you didn't allow the opposition to score once. But would you risk a victory to try and get a shutout? Well, during this game, that's exactly what New York Giants head coach John McVay did, when he decided that trying to shut out the Buccaneers and potentially risk losing the game in the process was more important than actually trying to win the game. It was a bizarre strategy that deserves a deep dive nearly half a century later, where the coach just flat out admitted, yeah, I know we had a lesser chance of winning doing what I did, but screw it, I wanted the shutout. Because this is the story behind one of the most bizarre in-game strategies in the history of the New York Football Giants. Before I talk about the actual strategy in question, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, and how the game itself was going. It's November 13th, 1977. It's week 9 of the NFL season, and as we're in the second half of the year, in what would be the final 14-game season in NFL history, we find ourselves down at Tampa Bay for this NFC battle between the New York Giants and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the Giants, their season started off on shaky ground, and I think that goes without saying. In week 2, they got annihilated by the Dallas Cowboys in a game in which the Cowboys openly admitted to treating it as a complete joke, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And in week 3, they made one of the dumbest decisions of the entire season, when, in a game against the Atlanta Falcons, they punted the ball down by 14 with 2 minutes left for some reason, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Still, despite their struggles at times, they enter this game at 3-5. They basically have no room for error, but the wildcard picture in the NFC seems awfully weak this year. So if they win this game and improve to 4-5, they might only find themselves one game out of the wildcard. Win this game, and you have a legitimate chance at making it to the playoffs for the first time in the Super Bowl era. Lose this game, and not only is your season over, but you live on in NFL history forever for the infamous distinction of being the first team to ever lose a game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who enter this one 0-22 lifetime. Well, the good news for the Giants was that 59 minutes and 30 seconds into the contest, they were on the front foot. Was it pretty? Not by any means. Oh god, this game was terrible. Tampa had so many opportunities inside New York territory that they just couldn't take advantage of, to the point where it was nauseating to watch. Still, this was a game of bend, don't break, and the Giants, even though it wasn't pretty at times, led it 10-0 by this point, with all 10 of their points coming in the first half, and the touchdown coming on a 2-yard run by Bobby Hammond after starting the drive at the goal line following a special teams gaffe by the Bucs. And as had been the case all season, Tampa was unable to do anything offensively when it mattered most, as you're seeing from these highlights. New York's defense held the Bucs to just 105 rushing yards on 39 carries, so less than 2.7 yards per carry. The Giants got 6 sacks on the day and ended up forcing 5 turnovers, not including a big turnover on downs in the first quarter by the goal line, and including quite a few in the end zone right as Tampa looked like they were about to capitalize. With 30 seconds to go in the contest, the Giants, holding on to a 10-point lead, looked like they were in a great spot. And before we talk about how this game ended, we need to flash back to this game right here, Week 5 of the 1970 season. It's October 18th, and the Giants are traveling up to Massachusetts to take on the Boston Patriots for the first time ever in a regular season game. The Giants didn't do anything of note offensively. They only mustered up 13 first downs the entire game, and didn't score a single touchdown outside of a 28-yard pass by Fran Tarkenton to Clifton McNeil. However, this game is notable not for what the Giants did, but rather for what they didn't do, which was allow a single point. October 18th, 1970, more than 7 years before the game against the Buccaneers, was the last time that the Giants pitched a shutout. From the time of that game against the Pats, there had been 123 shutouts in the NFL over those 7 years, including the playoffs. The Giants had none of them. Here's a list of every team in the NFL and the number of shutouts they had in that stretch, excluding Seattle and Tampa Bay, since they joined the league in 1976. So I'm only looking at teams that played in all 7 of those seasons. At the top of the list, you've got the Miami Dolphins at 11 and the Pittsburgh Steelers with 10. Of the 26 teams that were in the league from 1970 to 77, 23 of them had multiple shutouts, so this was fairly commonplace. The Philadelphia Eagles and New York Jets each only had 1 shutout in that stretch, but you might notice one team missing from that list. That's right, the New York Giants. In that time frame, from October 19th, 1970, until the time of the game against the Buccaneers, they were the only team without a shutout, going on more than 7 years. It was a drought that they were on the verge of breaking. So now, knowing that it's been 7 years since their last shutout, let's talk about where the Giants are at this point in the contest. The team is facing 4th down at their own 2-yard line up by 10 points with about 30 seconds left in the game. If you get the punt off, you're fine, but considering how far back you're pinned, conventional wisdom would say to take the intentional safety, since it would remain a 2-score game and would all but guarantee that you win. So if you don't get the punt off and it gets blocked and doomsday strikes, your odds of winning the game just drastically plummeted. Which raises the question, which do you value more? Do you value winning the game more, or getting the shutout? Do you take the intentional safety and guarantee the win? Or do you try for the shutout so hard that it negatively impacts your chances of winning and is, from a strictly objective standpoint, not the smart thing to do? Because at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that the most important thing is that you win the game. If you can get those extra stats, awesome, but you have to be smart and do what you think gives you the best chance to win the game. As an example, in baseball, let's say you've got a pitcher who's on 120 pitches through 8 innings, and he's throwing a no-hitter. If you're up 10-0 and you've got the game won, yeah, leave him in and let him try for glory. You've got nothing to lose. But if it's a 1-0 game, that's a bit of a different story. Teams are way more inclined to bring on their closer in that spot, and understandably so. Or let's say it's a soccer match, and you've got a player who's scored twice already. You obviously want to get him his hat trick, and fortunately for you, you've got yourself a penalty kick in the 80th minute. This man is notoriously bad at PKs. He's only converting them roughly 40% of the time. Now if you're at 4-0, you've got nothing to lose. You let the man try the penalty kick, and get him his hat trick. But if it's tied at 2-2, yeah, you're probably just having your designated penalty taker take this skip, because you can't risk it. You get the idea. And the same logic, for most people, applies here in this Giants-Bucs game that you've been watching. If it's 30-0 at this point, or this game means nothing and you've been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, screw it. Try and get the punt off and get that shutout. And obviously, This isn't even a debate if we're playing the game under the 2024 rules, where the 2-point conversion is a thing. Under no circumstances do you take the intentional safety there and make it a 1-possession game from a 2-possession game without making the opposition work for it. If it's 10-0 and you take the safety to make it 10-2 and you give it back to the other team, all they need is a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to tie the game up. No reason to do that. But remember, this is 1977 that we're talking about. There is no 2-point conversion. The most that you can do on a single possession is score 7. If you take the intentional safety and make it 10-2, even if the Buccaneers drive down the field and get a touchdown with the extra point, they're still trailing 10-9. If you take the intentional safety, you guarantee the victory. The Bucs are not going to, in a matter of 25 seconds, return a safety punt, score a touchdown, recover an onside kick, get another 30 yards, and then get a field goal. It's just not happening. The intentional safety wins the game, even if it does take the shutout off the board. However, the ultimate goal is to win the game. At the end of the day, that's why you play, according to Herm Edwards. And let's say that you don't take the intentional safety and instead decide to punt it out of the back of your own end zone. There is a very real possibility, considering how short the distance is between the line of scrimmage and the punter, that the punt gets blocked and gets recovered by Tampa in the end zone for a touchdown. That makes it a 10-7 game and makes it a 1-possession contest. At that point, all Tampa needs to do is recover an onside kick, which was doable back in 1977. And if they can get 30 yards in 3 or 4 plays, which is more than doable, seeing as they actually had no trouble getting large chunk plays on the day in the passing game, they tie it up. It should also be noted that the Giants had a notoriously bad special teams unit that frequently allowed things like this to happen. The previous year, in 1976, their punter, Dave Jennings, led the league by having 3 of his punts get blocked. So it's not like I'm talking about some insane hypothetical here. Considering where the Giants were on the field, and considering their awful history in situations like this, yeah, it was 100% a legitimate possibility that this could blow up in their face. So, do you decide to go for the guaranteed win? Or do you get greedy and go for the shutout? Well, John McVay decided to go for the shutout. As for the result,
I used to draw an X over my number on the blackboard, they used to tell me. That meant get him. But he hits back, look out.
He ran over you with class, right?
That's right.
That's what you'd expect. I wonder if they might concede a safety. I doubt it. Nope. Good kick by Jennings. In a hurry. Higgins. Danny Reese, I beg your pardon, not Higgins. He gets back to about the 42-yard line where the clock will stop now.
It actually didn't hurt them. No harm done. Crisis averted. Even though it was, objectively speaking, the wrong play if you're trying to win the game, it ended up working out, as the Giants successfully got the punt away, thereby ensuring their 10-0 victory over the Buccaneers, their first shutout in over 7 years. And I want to make it clear, I'm not looking at this from a 2024 lens where more fans know about the intentional safety. Number one, the intentional safety had been executed many times before in the 1970s, including a Monday Night Football game in 1973 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But number two, you heard the announcers briefly talking about it, and it was a big enough decision and controversy that afterwards, head coach John McVay was asked, point blank, why he didn't take the intentional safety. And McVay said that he didn't want to do his defense dirty like that. Said McVay, I wasn't going to deprive the defense of the shutout. It wouldn't be fair. As he said, I thought about the safety, but I just couldn't bring myself to take the shutout away from the defense. And to be fair, other defenders on the Giants echoed those thoughts that they wanted to shut out the Buccaneers, and they didn't want McVay to take the safety. Said safety Clyde Powers, if he had taken the safety, it would have made a lot of guys real upset. And as future Hall of Fame linebacker Harry Carson said, We wanted the shutout. We didn't want them to get nothing. But you have to wonder if they'd be saying those same things if the punt got blocked and doomsday struck. They might be singing a completely different tune. Now, we all know what happened after the game between these two teams behind me right here, in terms of the 1978 season 1 year later, when the Giants had the win in the bag, and John McVay and the coaching staff decided to do something really, really stupid. The miracle of the Meadowlands against the Philadelphia Eagles. I guess to some extent, that stemmed from that Giants-Bucs game, where the Giants had the win in the bag if they just did the smart thing, and instead, they did something highly unconventional. It obviously worked out in this game all right, but it didn't work out in the miracle of the Meadowlands 1 year later. Oh, and for what it's worth, the Giants would end the season losing 4 of their final 5 games, and finish the season with a 5-9 record. The Buccaneers, meanwhile, they would finally get their first win of the season and first win in franchise history in Week 13 against the New Orleans Saints, snapping a 26-game losing streak. So I raised the question that I asked at the top of this video. How far would you go to preserve a shutout? Would you sacrifice your team's chances at winning the game in order to do it? If an intentional safety would end the shutout, but would give your team a 100% chance at winning the game, would you do it? Well, we know what the answer was for the New York Giants back in 1977. Because when it came to their game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their refusal to take the safety was anything but safe. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.